The night is thick with the whispers of the ancestors. The fire crackles, casting long shadows that dance like spirits. The griot's voice is a low, haunting tremor that slithers into the soul. Listen, child, and listen well. For the river does not always return what it takes, and the water spirits do not always know whom they steal. A beat of silence. The drums hum in the distance, a warning. Before we begin, if stories like this touch your heart, please like the video, subscribe for more, and tell us in the comments where in the world you're listening from. It means a lot to us. In the land where the baobabs stretch their arms to the sky and the earth sings with the footsteps of the departed, there was a village cradled by the singing river. The people called it so because at dusk, the waters would hum a melody so sweet. It was said even the ancestors paused in their journey to listen. But the river was not just a giver of songs, it was also a taker. And on the night the moon wore a veil of red, the river took something precious. A child. Not just any child. The prince. His name was Adissa, one who was clear, for his laughter rang like morning bells, and his voice carried the warmth of the sun. He was the son of Oba Adewale, the great king whose rule stretched over 7 hills. But Adissa was not like the other royal children, who sat stiff on their thrones, learning the art of war and diplomacy. No. Adissa was a child of the water. His feet were always bare, caked with the red earth of the riverbank. His skin, the rich brown of shea butter, glistened under the sun as he played with the fishermen's children. His mother, the queen, had long given up scolding him. Let him be, she would sigh. The river loves him too much. And she was right. But love in the hands of the spirits is not always gentle. On the day the river stole him, the air was thick with the scent of ripe mangoes and burning palm leaves. The villagers whispered of strange happenings. Fishermen returning with empty nets, their faces pale, their lips trembling. Something walks in the water, they murmured. Something with eyes like the moon and hair like black seaweed. The elders dismissed it as fear. But Adissa's grandmother, Ye-Ife, the oldest living soul in the kingdom, knew better. The Mami Wata walks among us, she said, her voice like dry leaves scraping stone. And when she takes, she does not ask for permission. That evening, as Adissa knelt by the river to wash his face, he saw her. A woman. No, not a woman. A being of impossible beauty, her skin shimmering like wet pearls, her eyes holding the depth of the ocean. In her hands, she held a golden comb and a mirror that reflected not faces, but souls. Little one, she cooed, her voice the sound of waves lapping at the shore. Why do you linger so far from home? Adissa, enchanted, reached for the mirror. And when his fingers touched the glass, the river swallowed him whole. When Adissa did not return, the village erupted in chaos. The king's warriors scoured the land, their torches cutting through the night like angry stars. The queen collapsed, her wails piercing the heavens. But Ye-Ife sat silent by the fire, her old bones trembling. You fools, she whispered. You searched the land, but the river has taken him. And then, with a voice that carried the weight of centuries, she spoke the terrible truth. The water spirit does not know she has stolen a prince. And if he is not returned before the next full moon, he will forget he was ever human. The fire dims. The night grows colder. The griot's eyes gleam with secrets. What will become of the boy who was loved too much by the water? Will the kingdom ever see their prince again? Or has the Mami Wata claimed him forever? The drums quicken. The wind howls. The story has only just begun. The morning after Adissa vanished, the singing river fell silent. No more sweet melodies at dusk, only the hollow gurgle of troubled waters. The villagers gathered at the banks, their faces drawn with fear, their hands clutching talismans of protection. The fishermen refused to cast their nets. The children no longer played in the shallows. Even the birds seemed to avoid the water's edge. Ye-Ife stood at the riverbank, her bare feet sinking into the damp earth. She held a calabash filled with palm wine and bitter kola nuts, an offering to the spirits. The wind carried her whispered plea across the water's surface. Great Mami Wata, return what you have taken. This child is not yours to keep. But the river gave no answer. In the royal compound, Oba Adewale sat upon his leopard skin throne. His once proud shoulders slumped under the weight of grief. His counselors spoke of war parties and searching neighboring villages, but the king waved them away. His eyes, usually sharp with wisdom, were clouded like a rainy season sky. My son did not wander off, the king declared. His voice cracked like dry wood in fire. The river has always called to him. Now it has claimed him. The queen knelt at his feet, her royal wrappers stained with tears. We must consult the oracle, she begged. There must be a way to bring him back. A hush fell over the court. To consult the oracle meant facing painful truths, perhaps even making terrible sacrifices. The king's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Prepare the gifts. We go to Babalawo at first light. The journey to the sacred grove took until midday. The Babalawo, a man so old his skin looked like tree bark, sat surrounded by cowrie shells and ancient carvings. He listened as the king spoke, then cast the divination bones 3 times. Each throw made him frown deeper. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded like many voices layered together, the ancestors speaking through him. The child lives, but not as you know him. The water spirit has wrapped him in her embrace. She does not know he is royal blood. She only knows his pure heart called to hers. The queen clutched her chest. How do we get him back? The Babalawo's milky eyes seemed to look through her. One must go into the spirit world beneath the river. One who knows both land and water. One whose love for the child is greater than their fear of death. A heavy silence followed. Then, from the back of the gathering, a small voice spoke. I will go. All turned to see Adisa's twin sister, Adunni, standing with her fists clenched at her sides. At 12 years old, she barely reached her father's waist, but her eyes burned with determination. The king roared his refusal. Absolutely not. I will not lose both my children. But Adunni stood firm. I dream of him every night, she said. I hear him calling from under the water. The Mami Wata doesn't want to keep him, she's lonely. She needs to understand. Ye-Ife studied her great-granddaughter with new respect. The child speaks truth. The spirits often take what they cannot have. But sometimes they can be reasoned with. The Babalawo nodded slowly. The bond between twins is sacred. If anyone can reach him, it is she. As the sun began its descent, preparations were made. Adunni was dressed in white linen, her hair braided with blue beads, the color of water spirits. Around her neck hung a small leather pouch containing earth from the palace grounds, a tether to the human world. At midnight, when the veil between worlds is thinnest, Adunni stood at the river's edge. The full moon painted silver streaks across the black water. The entire village had come, holding torches that flickered like anxious fireflies. Ye-Ife handed Adunni a carved wooden flute. Play this when you find him. Its song will remind him of home. The queen embraced her daughter fiercely, whispering prayers into her hair. The king placed his hand on her head in blessing, though his eyes shone with unshed tears. With a deep breath, Adunni stepped into the water. As she waded deeper, strange currents tugged at her legs. The river seemed to open before her, forming a shimmering path downward. The last thing the villagers saw before she disappeared beneath the surface was the determined set of her small shoulders as she descended into the spirit world. The torches guttered in a sudden wind. The drums stopped mid-beat. Somewhere in the distance, a lone hyena laughed. What awaits the brave girl in the underwater kingdom? Can she reason with the powerful Mami Wata? Or has she, too, been lost to the river's embrace? The water closed over Aduni's head like a cool, living curtain. But instead of choking darkness, she found herself surrounded by a shimmering blue glow. The riverbed stretched before her, not as mud and reeds, but as a glittering pathway of crushed pearls and polished stones. Strange fish with golden scales darted around her, their eyes too knowing, too human. Her bare feet touched smooth marble steps leading downward. The pressure in her ears told her she was descending deep, yet she breathed easily, as if the water had become air. Around her neck, the pouch of palace earth grew warm against her skin, her anchor to the world above. A voice, liquid and musical, echoed through the water. Who dares enter my domain? Aduni's heart pounded, but she lifted her chin. I am Aduni, daughter of Oba Adewale. I've come for my brother. The water before her swirled, forming the shape of a woman, tall, regal, with skin that shifted between deep blue and green. Mami Wata's hair floated around her like black silk in the current, threaded with living starfish and pearls. Her eyes held the endless depths of the ocean. Your brother? The water spirit's laughter sounded like bubbling streams. The child with the golden voice belongs to me now. The river claimed him fairly. Mami Wata flicked her wrist, and the water around them cleared to reveal a magnificent coral palace. Its towers spiraled upward, encrusted with sea diamonds that caught the phantom light. All around them, treasures glittered. Gold coins from sunken ships, jewelry from forgotten kingdoms, and most chilling of all, dozens of children playing silently in the courtyard. Their eyes were glassy, their movements slow and dreamlike. Among them sat Adisa, weaving shells into a crown. When he looked up, his gaze slid right past his sister without recognition. Aduni's breath hitched. What have you done to him? Mami Wata smiled, revealing teeth like polished bone. Given him eternal childhood. No pain, no growing old, no responsibilities of royalty. Just endless play in my beautiful kingdom. She gestured, and Aduni saw the truth. Each child here had been taken from riverbanks across Africa over centuries, preserved in this watery limbo. The realization struck like a spear to the chest. Her brother was becoming one of them, his memories of home fading with each passing moment. Aduni clenched her fists. He doesn't belong here. He's a prince heir to. To what? Mami Wata's voice turned sharp as broken coral. A throne that will chain him with duty? A world where children grow into war and suffering. The spirit circled Aduni like a shark. I protect what the surface world would destroy. The pouch at Aduni's neck burned hotter. She remembered Ye Ife's words. Spirits take what they cannot have. They must be reasoned with. You're right, Aduni said carefully. The world above is hard, but it's real. It has sunrise and roasted plantains and grandmother's stories by firelight. She pointed to the vacant-eyed children. This is just a beautiful prison. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Mami Wata's face. Aduni pressed her advantage. Let me show him one memory. Just one. If he still chooses to stay, I'll leave in peace. The water spirit studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. One memory. But choose wisely, little one. Aduni brought out the wooden flute. As her fingers found the familiar holes, she played not a royal anthem, but the simple lullaby their mother had sung to them as babies. The one about the moon marrying the sun and creating the stars. The notes shimmered through the water like glowing fish. Odysseus' hand stilled on his shell crown. His head tilted, as if hearing something from very far away. Then slowly his lips moved. "Adunni." Mami Wata hissed, her form rippling with anger. "You tricked me. That's not just a memory. That's a calling song." The water around them darkened. The palace walls trembled. The other spirit children began to wail, a sound that vibrated through Adunni's bones. Odysseus stumbled to his feet, his eyes clearing like clouds parting. "Sister? Where?" Mami Wata's scream split the water. "Enough!" With a swipe of her webbed hand, a whirlpool formed, tearing brother and sister apart. Adunni's flute was ripped from her hands, spinning away into the depths. The pouch of sacred earth burst open, its contents scattering. As the current dragged her downward, Adunni's last sight was of Odysseus fighting against the water spirits, pulling him back into the coral palace. His mouth forming her name in silent scream. The river had given him up, then changed its mind. Can Adunni survive the spirit's wrath without her protections? Has Odysseus remembered enough to fight his way free? Or has Mami Wata ensured no one will ever challenge her again? The whirlpool dragged Adunni deeper than any river should go. The water pressed against her ribs like a giant hand squeezing the breath from her lungs. Her vision darkened at the edges as she tumbled through the churning currents. The last threads of air escaped her lips in silver bubbles that raced toward a surface now impossibly far above. Then impact. Her back struck something solid, and suddenly she could breathe again. Adunni gasped, her hands flying to her throat. She lay not on riverbed stones, but on a stretch of white sand so fine it felt like powdered moonbeams. All around her stood towering kelp forests, their fronds moving in unseen currents. This was no longer the coral palace, but some deeper, darker part of Mami Wata's realm. A shadow loomed over her. Not the beautiful water spirit this time, but something ancient and terrible. A being with the head of a crocodile and the body of a woman, her scaled skin studded with barnacles. The guardian of the deep places. "You have angered our queen," the creature rasped, its voice like grinding stones. "Now you will join the forgotten ones." It raised a clawed hand, and the sand beneath Adunni began to shift. Skeletons emerged. Dozens of them, all small, all children who had ventured into the river and never returned. Their bony fingers reached for her. In the coral palace, Odysseus fought against the water spirits holding him. The lullaby's echo still rang in his ears, stirring memories like silt from the riverbed. His sister's face, his mother's voice. The weight of a wooden practice sword in his hand. Not a weapon for war, but for protecting his people. "You promised," he shouted at Mami Wata. The spirit queen hovered above her throne of whale bones, her beautiful face twisted in rage. "You said no one would be hurt." Mami Wata's laughter was the sound of ice cracking. "I said you would have eternal childhood. I never said anything about your sister." She gestured, and the water formed images. Adunni struggling in the deep place, the skeletal children closing in. "She will make a fine addition to my collection." Odysseus' hands curled into fists. Something hot and fierce burned in his chest. Something no spirit magic could extinguish. Royal blood. Human will. "You don't understand," he said, his voice deepening strangely. "I'm not just some village boy you stole. I am Odysseus Adewale, son of kings." The water around him began to shimmer with golden light. "And I'm taking my sister home." Adunni kicked at the grasping bones, her foot passing right through them. Illusions. The realization came just as the crocodile woman's claws grazed her arm, drawing blood that curled through the water like smoke. "Real enough to hurt," the guardian hissed. "Real enough to kill." Adunni's hand flew to her torn sleeve. The cut stung, but the pain cleared her mind. Ye-Ife's teachings whispered through her thoughts. Spirit wounds need spirit medicine. She touched her fingers to the wound, then drew a pattern in the water with her own blood, the same sigil she'd seen carved above the palace doors. The guardian recoiled. You don't know what you're. A deafening crack split the water. The sand trembled. From above came a shower of glowing particles, the remnants of a dunny's pouch of sacred earth, still drifting downward. Where they touched the sigil, the water began to boil. Then Adissa came crashing through like a falling star wreathed in gold. Brother and sister tumbled together through the churning water. Around them, Mami Wata's realm was coming apart. Coral towers collapsing, spirit children waking from their trances and fleeing upward. She's breaking the bond. Adissa shouted over the roaring water. We have to reach the surface before. A scream cut through the chaos. Mami Wata herself came tearing after them, her beautiful form unraveling into something monstrous. A whirlwind of teeth and tentacles and broken mirrors. The river itself seemed to bend to her will, forming walls of current to block their escape. A dunny grabbed her brother's hand. Together, they swam not upward, but toward the crumbling palace where the wooden flute still spun in the currents. As Mami Wata closed in, a dunny snatched the flute and put it to her lips. The note that came out wasn't the lullaby. It was the royal war horn's call, the sound their father used to gather his warriors. The water trembled. Then, from the depths, came an answering call. Not from any instrument, but from hundreds of voices. The ancestors. Mami Wata shrieked as ghostly hands emerged from the riverbed, pushing Adissa and a dunny toward the surface while holding the water spirit back. The last thing a dunny saw before breaking through to air was Mami Wata's face, not angry now, but terribly, heartbreakingly lonely. The twins burst from the river gasping, their bodies washing onto the bank where the entire village stood waiting. Torches flared to life. Women ululated. The king and queen rushed forward, their faces streaked with tears. But Ye-Ife stood apart, her eyes on the river. The waters had gone perfectly still. Too still. She's not done with us, the old woman murmured. Adissa, coughing up river water, turned to look. There, just beneath the surface, floated the wooden flute, and wrapped around it, a single strand of black seaweed tied in an elaborate knot. A promise. A threat. A debt unpaid. How long until the river comes calling again? What price will Mami Wata demand for losing her golden voice, prince? And when the next child plays too close to the water's edge, who will save them? The village celebrated for 7 days and 7 nights. Drums pounded until the very earth trembled. Palm wine flowed like the river itself had turned sweet. Women danced with fire pots balanced on their heads, their movements telling the story of the twins' return without a single word. Children dared each other to dip toes in the singing river's edge, then shrieked with nervous laughter as they scrambled back. But Adissa and Adunni did not join the revelry. They sat with Ye-Ife in her hut, the old woman's gnarled fingers working a length of black seaweed between them. The same strand that had come wrapped around the flute. The same that now coiled in a clay bowl between them, pulsing faintly as if alive. The debt remains, Ye-Ife said. Her voice carried the weight of centuries. Mami Wata does not give up what is hers without payment. Adunni touched the fading cut on her arm, the one from the crocodile woman's claws. It still stung in the rain. What does she want? The fire popped, sending up sparks that reflected in Ye-Ife's milky eyes. What all lonely spirits want. To be remembered. To be honored. She lifted the seaweed strand, which had woven itself into a perfect circle. And one more thing. Adissa dreamed of the underwater palace every night. not as it had been in its glory, but as he'd last seen it, crumbling, abandoned, the spirit children all vanished. In these dreams, Mami Wata sat alone on her cracked throne, combing her hair with the golden comb, staring into the broken mirrors. When he told Ye Ife, she nodded. She showed you her truth, not as the monster who steals children, but as the guardian who forgets they had families. The old woman placed a hand on each twin's head. This is your burden to bear now, to make sure no one else forgets. So as the dry season turned to rainy season, the twins began their work. Adunni took the village children to the riverbank, not to fear the water, but to respect it. She taught them the proper songs to sing before fishing, the offerings to make when drawing water at dusk. Adissa, his voice deeper now but still golden, composed a new melody for the singing river. Not a lullaby this time, but a duet. One verse from the shore, one echoed from the water. A call and response between two worlds. On the night of the full moon, exactly 1 year after Adissa's return, the twins stood at the river's edge alone. Between them floated a small boat woven from reeds and sealed with beeswax. Inside lay their offerings: a lock of Adissa's hair, Adunni's first bead necklace, a vial of the queen's tears, a carving of their family made by the king's own hand. Most precious of all, the seaweed circle, now threaded with Adunni's blood and Adissa's breath, transformed into a living bracelet. As they set the boat adrift, the water began to glow, not with menace, but with something like recognition. The boat floated to the center of the river, then sank slowly, the light following it down until only darkness remained. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then, a single, perfect note rose from the depths. The wooden flute song, followed by another voice, ancient and watery, harmonizing. The twins smiled through their tears. The debt was paid. Years passed. Adissa grew into a wise king who ruled with compassion, always keeping one ear turned toward the river's song. Adunni became the village's first female diviner, her wisdom surpassing even Ye Ife's in time. The singing river never stole another child. But sometimes, on nights when the moon hung fat and low, villagers would report seeing a beautiful woman walking the banks. She wore a bracelet of black seaweed and human hair, and in her hands she carried a small wooden flute. If you listen very carefully, you might hear her humming a duet with someone just beneath the water's surface. And if you were very quiet, very respectful, you might even catch the reply, "The end." Or perhaps just the beginning. Before you go, if this story touched your spirit, do these 3 things right now. Smash that like button. Let us know this tale resonated with you. Subscribe with notifications on. Our storytelling fire burns daily. Comment below. Tell us where you're watching from and which moment moved you most. For the ancestors whisper that those who share wisdom shall receive it tenfold. Press the bell icon so you never miss when we drop new tales. And remember, the river never forgets a kindness, just as it never forgets a harm. Until next time, story lovers.